Bruce Feldman of The Athletic and the great Fox Sports college football team joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show in his usual Wednesday spot. It is signing day today, right?
It is, yes.
What is the significance of, is this as significant as the transfer portal, do you think? Or has it lost its significance?
It's lost some of its significance.
Okay.
I am going to say something that'll probably make you unhappy, but I will say it anyway.
Please.
The number one recruit in the country, Jeremiah Smith, arguably the top receiver to come out of South Florida in a generation from people who are dialed into that sort of thing, had been committed to Ohio State for a long time. People thought he might flip to Florida State or Miami. This morning he announced he's going to be a Buckeye. That's big for Ryan Day. They did lose another good receiver commit to Oregon.
Yes.
But, I think it's a sign of like, hey, people are still believing.
Oh, well, I mean, all you got to do is see who just caught the game-winning touchdown pass on Monday Night Football.
I know. Looked like the Rose Bowl catch he made.
Yeah, I think they showed. Did they show that in the game? I don't know. I thought I saw that on. Maybe I saw it on Instagram and something like that. Something like that. But I mean, that's all you got to do is just turn on the the television set in the NFL.
Brian Hartline and Ryan Day have cranked out elite receiver after elite receiver.
Right. So hopefully, he'll have a great career and then go on and become an offensive rookie of the year in the NFL, just like Garrett Wilson and C.J. Stroud will be, and maybe Marvin Harrison will be, and
next year.
Share if it's the same thing that they lost their last games to Michigan. Hopefully, that'll just be part of that young man's path.
Yeah, it kind of blew my mind a little. I talked to Marvin in the summer, and he was like, yeah, I got to beat Michigan. I haven't beat them yet. And it's crazy that this guy is the most talented receiver they've had there.
Yes.
But
he's not. He's going. I mean, I heard he said he wants to win the Natty, and he doesn't want to lose to Michigan. But he's a Pro Bowl receiver right now, potentially. You can truly make that case.
And he checks every box. I mean, he's like a delightful guy. He's very smart. Yes. He has great work ethic. All of it. He's, I would say, probably as good as has come out of college as a receiver in a long time.
Well, I know Joel Klatt, your colleague at Fox, he was talking about him being one of the top receivers in last year's class.
He would have been a top receiver last year. Wasn't a great receiver, but he's got really good size. He is super athletic.
So good.
And he's super intelligent and have the work ethic and the competitiveness. Yeah. To me, he's a can't miss.
So again, just returning, signing day is is it devalued in a way?
It's devalued a little because what's happened is the portal has become such a big deal, and what a lot of coaches have figured out is, development is key, but we may lose those players 2 years from now. We need guys now who are proven players. Yeah. And so it may be guys who are at smaller schools, at group of 5 schools, some even like FCS programs. I mean, Jared Verse, who you will talk about in the draft early, in the spring, was at what was known to you and I when we were growing up as SUNY Albany. It was a Great Dane in that league, and then he got spotted. Florida State got him. He had a terrific year last year. And that normally, years ago, that wouldn't have happened. He would have probably ended up maybe making it into the Senior Bowl or the Blue-Gray game or something and blew up in the draft process. But because he was able to, Florida State found him, this is the thing where we've seen lots of guys just have a second wind or get a second chance. And it's different. Everybody's looking for their Joe Burrow. And Joe Burrow was kind of buried on the Ohio State bench. He goes to LSU, and he becomes the greatest player in LSU history and leads them to a national championship.
And obviously, everybody, as you wants one of those to change their fortunes around so quickly. But again, I'm maybe it's the cynic in me, but every single time I see any signing or any announcement about signing day, like a day like today, or the transfer portal, I'm sitting here wondering how much money was involved in this.
Well,
and that's because that is what's going on right now,
but
right?
It's no secret. I mean, what you don't know is often exactly how much, but that is absolutely what's going on. I mean, I've talked to a lot of coaches last off season where they were like, guys are poaching, they're recruiting off your roster, and they're saying you need to get in the portal. We'll pay you this, and
even at games where they're competing against him, right?
Yeah, I've definitely heard from coaches they're looking around the post-game handshake and they see the head coach talking to one of their players and they kind of get a sinking feeling. The schools with the best collectives, the programs with the best collectives, certainly that is the Oregon Ducks. Phil Knight, they have, you saw what they did recently. They get Dylan Gabriel, who was the one quarterback who beat Texas this year at Oklahoma. he's going to be an Oregon Duck. He'll probably be a really good fit in that system, and they'll probably, when they go into the Big Ten next year, he'll make them a legit playoff contender.
And when I'm saying this about like how much money is involved and things of that nature, not to go full Greg Sankey here, but how do we know the money that's offered actually winds up in the hands of the kids as part of the commitment that's been made verbally? Or is there any paperwork on this sort of thing? Like,
there's definitely some,
with
but
with an actual sum of money that's on a contract that a player and the college sign? Like this.
We did a big story in The Athletic about a year ago on a pretty high-profile quarterback recruit out of Northern California, who at one point, and the money that was speculated and reported on how much he was supposedly getting to sign with the University of Florida was outlandish numbers. I mean, we're talking into the 8 figures, like $13 million.
Wow.
And that was essentially written on a bar napkin. That wasn't going to hold up. He ended up, not transferring. He ended up basically at Arizona State.
So that's the point I think Chip Kelly's making, that I think resonated with so many people, because it sounded, his 2-minute soliloquy, we played that last hour before you were coming here for our audience, his concept of let's not wait for Notre Dame essentially to join a conference. Let's have all the conferences become Notre Dame under the construct of a commissionership and 64 teams that I guess are decided, that are allowed into the football being removed from everybody else's athletic departments. Everybody else can go under the same old construct. Like the Pac-12 could technically still exist for the Olympic sports or or even basketball.
But not football, yeah.
But football is separate. And let's come up with rules that does handle the issues best that they can of NIL and transfer portal and scheduling and things of that nature and playoffs. And let's go and do that. Why not, is what I'm asking you. Why, what? That sounds too normal.
It does. And he has had some of these ideas for a while. We've had these conversations offline, at least, dating back the last 4 months. And there's, because he even talked about because he's more familiar with the NFL model than most college coaches, because he coached in the NFL.
He described it where you're going to be playing a certain other conference in a rotational basis.
Just like the NFL divisional models. Right. Yeah. And the other things that, he talked about was, how the TV rights would work. Now, some of this, though, if you're ESPN, you basically own the playoff. You own a lot of college football. Some of these TV deals are going to, how are you going to get around some of them?
So then make a commissioner consortiumship of, your boss at Fox, the bosses at ESPN, just hand it off to them. I think there's some honesty. Like, I mean, there are some athletic directors who have come from ESPN. You know what I mean? So
one of the things that Chip has talked about for a while, and it's something the head coach of your alma mater talks about, is revenue sharing. And, what percentage of that, like, he has been pretty bullish on the players need to get taken care of. And Harbaugh's talked about that publicly. I don't know, it's hard to get these people together on a lot of things. And I'll use this as an example. So a year from now, we're going to have a playoff. It would be running right now and into the portal, into signing day. And one of the a head coach I spoke to this week said, and this is a guy who's on the AFC board, because we haven't even talked about that. Meaning, like, stuff just happens and they cannot get out in front of anything. Chip, like a lot of coaches, their frustration was a lot of the rules that college football, major college football has to deal with often come from places that are not major college, presidents or ADs. Their orbit or their perspective or what they deal with is it's not apples and oranges. It's like apples and spam. It's a completely different thing. And so that's why I think he looks at, independent status and all those other things. But I think Chip might be a really good person to be the commissioner of this. Well, he doesn't want to be, but I was like, I don't think anybody, our old, I think you probably worked with him back in the day too, Tim Brando, he's been talking about a conference commissioner since he was probably at ESPN. And he's railed at it. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had over drinks with him where he would talk about that. But he is not wrong, at least about that. He is not wrong about that.
I was about to say, Timmy B's conference commissioner meetings would be amazing. Tim Brando.
But he's been talking about that for a long time.
But the question is who's going to say this is madness? We're smart people. There's a lot of money at stake. We all understand the revenues involved. Let's figure it out. Because you just said something, Bruce Feldman, that totally blows my mind. So next year, coaches of programs that are now the first round of this college football playoffs will be getting ready for the games while they're figuring out who's coming in for National Signing Day and who's in the portal and who's not. Obviously, I know they have staffs for that. But get out of here. It's so stupid. It's dumb. And it's supposed to be higher education. Why are we doing that? So figure out who's to do it. And I will just, as I said to you before, to these guys here before, Chip Kelly saying what he's saying about, paying players and whatever and doing that sort of thing. He needs to be careful because at least Harbaugh's got the NFL to fall back on when he's getting drummed out. Chip Kelly, I don't know if the NFL is going to be there for him.
No, I don't think Chip cares about he's going to say what he thinks, and I don't think he's worried about that kind of thing. He's giving his opinion on it,
and it makes complete sense. So then I guess the last thing for you is so what will be the impetus that next year a bunch of blue blood programs will be like, this is nuts. We're getting ready for a college football playoff game, and I got to make sure this kid is actually going to sign his letter of intent, and I'm going to be texting in the middle of a film session, or I'm stepping off a podium to do my media availability for a college football playoff first round game. I'm on the road. I got to figure out how to go on the road, and I'm in the middle of all the recruiting. Who's going to step in and do this? Who's going to be the
I think
adult?
One of the things, and this particular coach I talked to made the point of look, everybody knows we're well compensated. Nobody's going to feel sorry for us, but logistically, it can't hold up.
It can't.
So
what I'm saying is, who's going to be? Who is it? Sankey? Is it one of the? It
would have to be somebody like that, because if it can't be, look, the ACC commissioner Jim Phillips, who was a former AD at Northwestern, is a Notre Dame guy. I think he's one of the smarter guys in college athletics. Now he's ended up stepping in it from time to time because he's coming out of the ACC, and everybody's trying to speak to their constituents, right? That's the part where it gets kind of sticky. Is who are the people who are going to have the platform, who are going to have the stomach to do that? I'm not saying they don't exist, but it'd be interesting to see who would get into that. There's been a bunch of stuff where I feel like Greg Sankey has wanted to do the right thing for the big picture, but he also knows he's the one with the most clout because he's the one with the most resource programs, has a huge TV deal. Some of these other places, like the Big Ten, is similarly well resourced, but the Big Ten leadership has been so up and down, from Kevin Warren, who is, dealing with all sorts of stuff, and then he jumps to the NFL. You got Tony Vecchiti, who's had a rocky first year. He obviously knows the TV business. That's where it came from. The Pac-12, was essentially rudderless. You have everybody is so trying to do their own thing, because if they realize they don't, somebody's poaching them. It's a really strange dynamic. I'm not saying it's never going to get sorted out. They have to figure it out sooner than later, but I don't know who steps in the middle of it, because just knowing what I know about how the CFP operates, there's stuff behind the scenes that would kind of blow people's minds if they knew the level of dysfunction and knives out that goes in with that stuff.
Bruce Feldman here on the Rich Eisen Show. You ever see Casablanca? You ever see that, Bruce? You ever see that movie, Casablanca?
I did not.
Okay. You need to see Casablanca. I know you haven't, right?
Definitely not.
Do you see Casablanca?
Of course, Rich.
TJ, have you ever seen Casablanca?
Bits and pieces, all the most memorable parts
Well,
of it.
there's a famous scene in Casablanca where the police chief is shocked that there's gambling going on in Casablanca as he's taken, some sort of.
I feel like I've seen this in Caddyshack with Bushwood.
Oh, yeah. Keep it fair. Keep it fair.
For Brockman and
it's a famous line, like that the cop that knows that there's gambling going on is shocked that there's gambling going on in Casablanca. That's how I felt reading your piece. That every single coach that coached against Michigan thinks Alabama's going to win.
Could you have just used the Bushwood example with Judge Smales and not made me feel?
No.
Brockman feel like we're so uneducated and so.
Excuse me, that's your problem. Okay, Bruce. Like, I don't know how you haven't seen Casablanca.
Let's see, when was that released?
Oh my God!
Good reference.
Okay, so while he's
Googling up one of the most famous films
1942
of all
nice
time.
Timely reference.
Go see it. That means you're over 2. Yes, sir.
All right, so the Michigan thing is fascinating to see the reaction. So I worked on 4 different stories that are all running this week at The Athletic. Day 1 was Michigan, day 2 Alabama, day 3, which is today, is Texas, day 4 tomorrow is Washington.
Okay.
Talked to all these coaches who played them. Not all are the coaches from the conference. Most are, but there's a handful that I talked to who or maybe played them in the non-conference. The Michigan one, as it turned out, was the most where when I talked to these guys, and it didn't hit me right away. It actually hit me as towards the end of, I was working on this. It was like, man, the way these guys are talking about it, it's like Michigan's like a 10-point underdog. And they're actually, at the time, was like a 2-point favorite, they're a 1-point favorite now. But I think there's a couple of things that are at play here. And I'm glad we're talking about this because, I got so much blowback from Michigan fans who are already, kind of at wit's end because of what's gone on. Never mind you. Yeah. Let's talk about the bulk of the Michigan fans.
Yes,
because of all the stuff that has gone on with the Connor Stallions story and how it's been reported and maybe the side comments and everything else, right? And also, the Big Ten's punishment. One thing that I think happened towards this is, okay, they went 3-0 without Jim Harbaugh, and that was the toughest games. Beat Penn State at Penn State, beat Maryland, trap game-ish, and then obviously beat their arch rival again. I think the schedule, and then they play a really good defense, not a good offense, but a really good defense. Number one, defense basically they're going to see in Iowa in the Big Ten title game. So the schedule is super backloaded, right? And I think with the biggest question marks that coaches have is with J.J. McCarthy and the offense. Because it was like, hey, he looks so good in the beginning of the year, and then I'm watching him now, and they're not explosive at all.
Well, they handed it off 20-some-odd straight times against Penn State to win that game.
They did. Now, also, though, he got a lot of pressure in the first couple series of the game. The right tackle couldn't block. And look, Penn State has super twitchy edge rushers, Chop Robinson being one. He's going to be a problem for anybody.
And I'm sure Alabama does, too.
Yeah. I mean, Dallas Turner is of that ilk. He might not be quite what Chop Robinson is, but he's close. And I think, so the word is, J.J. McCarthy was banged up. And now, will he be 100% after a month away from, the end of the season to now? Could be a different guy. He's really athletic when he's healthy. So there's that.
Yeah, I saw the quote. Like, what, he's got to play the game of his life in order to be at Alabama, right? To win it all? But
maybe.
You wouldn't have to say that about Milroe, too? You know what I mean? Like, that's...
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
Not really? Okay. I mean, again, I'm just...
If Milroe plays like he did against LSU, who albeit has a bad defense, but he plays like he did against Georgia, and this is where I'm going with this. Most of the coaches did not see Alabama, I'm talking about the Big Ten coaches, did not see Alabama play Auburn because they were playing that weekend. What they did see was Alabama beat Georgia. So they're sitting there and you're seeing Alabama at their best. Their offensive line looked way better than it did against Texas, against USF, against Auburn. They gave up a lot of yards on the ground defensively. Hugh Freeze gave them a lot of problems with what he does. Georgia, Kirby Smart and Nick Saban come from the same place. I think it's similar to what they practice against every day when they're practicing against themselves, and then how do they attack it. And Nick Saban also knows what gives us problems probably gives them problems because it's the same defensive family, tree. Whereas, people have watched no lie. I mean, Michigan was, J.J. McCarthy, I think, threw 1 touchdown pass over the last 5 games.
There's no question his body of work in the early parts of the season and then the last parts of the season are 2 separate pieces of tape. I mean,
so you put that part together with the part where, all this other stuff comes out, and you already had some of these coaches feeling like, all right, they're getting an unfair advantage, and now they're looking and going, well, it does make you wonder, did he, with him having the answers to the test,
yes,
and now if he doesn't, is he operating with the same level of confidence?
When you say answers to the test, you're referring to the Connor Stallion stuff?
Well, they're referring to know which blitz is coming from where, to know, it's.
Oh, so his lack of production in the last parts of the season is not to the similar part of the season, not similar to the earlier parts of the season, is not because of the scheduling. It's because he had answers to the tests removed. I think we're actually seeing the results of Michigan having the sign stealing, ripped out root and branch.
Yes, one coach said he thought, okay, there is the schedule is backloaded. There were much better teams,
right?
But also conceded it does make you wonder on that. A lot of other coaches I talked to also felt that was a red flag to them.
So then one last thing, and then we can part ways and do this again very soon. And it's fine if the answer is not the one that clearly I'm digging for. Did you sense any sense of still resentment or anything, anger, resentment from these folks that would color their remarks to you on this very subject?
It's entirely possible. It's a human nature thing. And I saw, look, and I think enough Michigan fans who read me know I picked Michigan to win the national title.
Don't worry about that sort of nonsense.
But one of the commenters made a point. He was like, this is the difference between the SEC and the Big Ten. And it's like the SEC is kind of on board with its SEC,
yeah,
and the Big Ten kind of eats its own. And look, Nick Saban, he is, they have, I think this person used it, and I don't disagree. There was a lot of reverence for Nick Saban. I mean, this team barely got into the playoff, right? I mean, we talked about this before. It was like, whereas Michigan, I think there is still some leftover hostility with some of the coaches. I don't know if I wouldn't say it was with all of the ones I talked to, because some of them haven't been in the league that long, don't have maybe the personal animus, but there's a few I think did. And I think there was also, when they saw it, it was like, okay, they're gettable. Now, again, I think it really has as much to do with if J.J. McCarthy's 100%. Like the guy I saw last year in Columbus, when they beat Ohio State, and to me, it was like they could have gotten blown out of that place, but they were hung around, and then they took over in the second half. He did not have Blake Corum. He had Donovan Edwards, who went off, but Donovan Edwards was hobbled in the game because he was playing with like a soft cast.
Right.
And so they were not 100%, and he hit some big plays. Like I still think he needs to be at his best to beat Alabama. I think you could say that about every quarterback against every team in this college football playoff. But I understand what you're saying. I get it. Bruce, thanks for coming in, man. Have a great bowl season and a happy new year, and we will chat after the college football playoff semifinals, sir. I'm not going to see you at the Rose Bowl?
I'll see you at the Rose Bowl. Fantastic. There you go. We've established that. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.